school, just to put it out there.
I think that would be great.
Hey, Dennis. Good.
And Lynn.
Not you too, John.
Well,
I have a red light. Okay. Good evening and welcome. And would you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And we'll start with public comment. Nobody? Then Superintendent, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I gotta get close to this microphone. I thought I'd just take a few seconds to talk about the process of calling school. As you can imagine, this morning we got quite a few calls at the central office and at the buildings questioning my judgment. And I understood why people would question my judgment today, so I just wanted to make sure people understood the process we use. I set my alarm for 4 o'clock this morning because I knew it was going to snow. Lisa, the transportation director, and I had a conversation yesterday. We knew that the snow was going to start sometime in the morning. It hadn't started at 4 o'clock. I got my first call from a fellow superintendent at about 5 minutes of 5, and we talked about the snow situation and what we were hearing. And so we have this network of superintendents. Then after I got done talking to the superintendent, who is my connection to the other area superintendents, I called our transportation director. And we both determined, based on the weather report that we were hearing, reading, and seeing, that the snow that was coming in was going to be anywhere from 2 to 4 inches. It was going to come in over a 8-hour time period, and it was really nothing. It wasn't going to be a major event. So at 6 o'clock, I was watching Channel 9, and sure enough, the weatherman was saying, you know, this is going to be an 8-hour snowstorm. It's going to be fast-moving. It's going to go through the area relatively quickly, and essentially saying it's nothing to worry about. So I have to call school around 5:30 so that our drivers don't come in at 5:45 to start warming up the diesel buses and getting ready to do their runs. So the decision to call school has to be made very, very early in the morning. So this morning, collectively, we said, well, we might as well have school. It's just going to be a snow event, and it's going to be relatively light. And of course, it wasn't. Nobody predicted it was going to be wet snow. Nobody predicted that it was going to come in heavy, and actually stayed quite consistent through the day, a couple of breaks. And so, naturally, people called and said, what were you thinking? So calling school really is a judgment call based on the information you're receiving. And the information that we received this morning, and all the area superintendents agreed, was we should be able to go to school in this kind of snow. Hindsight, absolutely, I would have either delayed or canceled school. But I don't want parents or people in the community to think that those decisions are made lightly. They're very carefully considered, thoughtful, and sometimes we're just dead wrong, and sometimes we're right. And this morning, the call was wrong. And, you know, I do appreciate the concern people expressed, and I thought it was worth putting that out there so people understood the process that was used is better than a guess, but not scientific, because you're listening to the best advice of weather people. And as we all know, sometimes they read the weather wrong as well. So I do appreciate all the calls I received, and I didn't want people to feel like their calls were unheeded.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are we?
Ready to move on to actions?
Yeah.
Okay, so under 4A, Superintendent's Actions, the first motion that I was going to ask you to consider this evening is the consideration of the Siemens proposal. But since our last meeting and tonight, a proposal from an alternative vendor was put in my hands. And I talked to Maria, the chair today, Maria, and said, I really feel like I need to get more thorough legal advice before I ask you all to take action. And I promise you that I'll have that for you at the first meeting in February. But I really needed some time to work through implications for us if we were to consider an alternative proposal. And that's what's going on. So I'm going to ask you to postpone, reschedule this item to February 6th, and we'll have a thorough presentation for your consideration.
From the alternative people have a presentation? Or
Maybe not. It depends. It depends on what our legal advice is. That's the piece that I'm stymied by, Al, and I really don't want to put something in front of you when I don't have that kind of information to support.
Will Brian Cherry be here to answer
Absolutely.
questions?
Yeah, Brian was ready for tonight. He was all geared up and ready to go.
Thank
And
you
I
very
said,
much.
got to put on the brakes, bud. We're going to have to wait 2 weeks.
go on plow?
So he was terrific. Then the next motion I would have you consider is from the high school. It's an overnight field trip, and I'd ask Mr. Allen to come to the podium and talk through these requests. And then afterwards, we'll have Mr. Rashad do the same for the middle school.
Yeah, these are, we do this every year. The first one is for the Jazz All-State Festival. We have 4 kids who've been selected. They're selected, they try out, and they're tops in their musical area. And they have the opportunity to go to the Jazz All-State at Pinkerton Academy. And it's an overnight experience because there's a whole lot of activity that goes on around it. So that's the first one. The second request is similar. It's the All-State, again, it's an All-State orchestra performance. There are 2 kids in that. And so, again, tried out, chosen from all over the state, and so it's an honor for those kids. So both of those, and that one is in April.
Todd, while you're there, could you address the issue of insurance on our students?
Yes, when kids go on an overnight field trip, there's certain documentation that the advisor takes with them. When kids enroll at Oyster River, first thing they're asked to do is a whole series of registration forms. One of the forms that every student is required to turn in before they can participate in extracurricular activities is a medical form that includes information about insurance, and there are various options that a family can choose to provide. Those forms are then copied, and the advisor takes those with them on the trip, so they have all that information in front of them. In the event that there's an issue with the ability to afford insurance, there are various low-cost options and no-cost options that can be offered and kids are directed to. So all kids are insured when they go on a trip.
Thank you.
Yep.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the Oyster River High School overnight field trip.
Second.
Moved by Ann Lane, seconded by Krista. Discussion? Hearing none. Could we have a show of hands, please? We have 6 in the affirmative, student rep in the affirmative. Motion passes. I forgot to mention that Megan is home with the flu and will not be here tonight.
And then the second motion I'd ask you to consider this evening is a similar one to the high school, but from the middle school, and Mr. Rashad will address those.
Yep, we have 2 trips planned. The first is our second annual Washington, D.C. trip. We went down there for the first time last year. We'll have another 100 students, as you might have seen. Myself and my assistant principal, Mr. Sullivan, head down too, and Mark Nichols essentially leads this trip. He's an 8th grade social studies teacher. On the Renaissance team, we have a chaperone for every 10 students, and as I tell the parents, of course, safety is our first priority. The first trip, we had a couple lessons last year that we can do better for this year, but the goal is to arrive safely, come home safely, and I must say the trip, what a great experience last year. And the second trip is the Disney trip We do auditions every other year to go down to Disney, and I'm not sure how many times we've been down, but as long as I've been at the middle school, we've gone down there. So we do this every other year through our middle school jazz band, which is led by Dave Irvin.
Is that a competitive event, Jay?
What they have to do is they actually have to audition to be accepted to perform at Disney, but in terms of a competition, I don't believe so. It's just the privilege to actually perform there.
And is that fundraised?
Yes, they actually do a variety of different fundraising for that trip to bring down the cost for students.
And could you address the same question Todd addressed about health insurance?
Health insurance, our students either are on our parents' health insurance. We collect all that information before we go on the trip, so if there's any known issues, we address that internally.
So everybody who's going on the trip is
Yes.
duly insured?
Yes. Yep. Sure.
The jazz band trip, Mr. Irvin has to submit to a competition at Disney to be accepted. So there is a competitive part to it. It's kids don't independently apply what he does. If that clarification helps.
It does, yeah.
It's kind of like the Patriots getting in the playoffs recently, though. Dave's got a great record in terms of being selected because they do such a great job.
So is Dave Tom Brady?
The Tom Brady of jazz bands.
John?
Oh, I'll save it for the discussion.
Motion to approve the ORMS overnight field trips.
Moved by Krista, seconded by
Ed?
Ed.
It was too fast.
Discussion? Yes.
This will be my third child's trip, so all three of my kids will have taken this trip. So perhaps I should abstain from the voting.
Would you count twice?
No, that only happens after the fourth child. You're in luck. John?
I myself went on the jazz band Disney trip, and I can say that it was one of the best, if not the best week of my life.
Wow.
Cool.
Okay. Further discussion? Could we have a show of hands, please? 6 in the affirmative. John in the affirmative. Motion carries.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I need to ask John, what was the best part? The air transportation, the bus transportation, the lodging? I arranged all that, so I'm just curious. The best part of that trip, or?
Well,
Or can't you tell us?
you're gonna be disappointed. It was the Sunday we went to Hollywood Studios
That was
at
really-
Disney, and we went on Tower of Terror and Rocket Roller Coaster all day.
And I remember that
Great
year
rides.
you guys got to make an extra trip, I think, to Tower of Terror. Then it was,
It was at night.
yeah.
It was great.
Great. Now the fun part.
Yep.
Adopt FY14 school budget.
So we're at the board action items. I'm going to invite our business manager, Susan Caswell, to the podium, and she's going to lead us through this piece of the agenda.
So, we need to post everything for our deliberative session, and we just need to get your approval on what we've discussed for the last 3-4 months as far as our budget goes. First item is your budget, which in your packet, you should have a revised warrant. I think that was put on your table, because that number was changed a little bit, so if you're curious as to what that number is, the back page has the 3 different funds. And that's the budget we would be moving forward, those different funds.
So the actual number change is due to the...
Due to when we were putting together the MS-26, which you had in your packet too, I went back and matched it to the documents we posted online from our detailed budget. And because of rounding, because we took the cents off the end of them, the numbers changed by, I think it was $23. So I just wanted to make sure all of those documents matched, because it can be a little bit of a nightmare. So rather than adjust the things that we posted online, we adjusted the warrant. So it's $23. On Fund 10, $37.
$23 plus? That would make sense, right? Because if we took this
Yes, I think it was
rounded up.
plus, yes. It went both ways in a couple of different places, but yes. So that number now matches the detailed budget that's posted online. It also matches the document that, when we summarize the budget by category, each different school, that matches, so.
Question, do we approve the budget separately, or do we approve it as part of the warrant articles?
It's your call. I think in the past, the way it was on the agenda was this way.
So approve the budget separately and then the warrant articles?
Yes, yes.
All right, I will make a motion to approve the budget at a total of $38,815,855.
Moved by Krista. Seconded by Ann. Discussion. Wow. Could we have a show of hands, please? 6 in the affirmative, John in the affirmative, motion passes.
Okay, and we've talked about the default budget before, so would you address that this evening as well, Sue?
Same thing here. It's the document that needs to be posted before deliberative session, so we just need to have your approval on that document that you have a copy in your packet. Hasn't changed since the last time we talked about it.
Is that this?
No, that is the...
Oh, the default budget.
The default budget is an actual form, Department of Revenue form, multiple pages.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to approve the default budget at $38,546,021.
Yes, it's also on your
Moved
warrant.
by Krista, second by Tom. Discussion.
That number's not as cool because it doesn't have as many 8s in it. It'll do.
Further discussion?
Normal discussion, element discussion. Krista lighten the mood around here a little bit. No,
Fun stuff.
Good point, though.
Could we have a show of hands, please? 6 in the affirmative, John in the affirmative. The default budget passes.
And the next item for your consideration is approving the warrant articles and then assigning warrant articles to individual board members who will act as their spokesperson at deliberative session.
I have a question before I make a motion. Is it possible to change any of these? The wording?
I guess maybe what we should do is go through each one of them individually.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, good. So I will make a motion to approve Article 1, 2, and 3, because there's no discussion on the first two. And not really on the third either.
Here we are.
You can't really change that one.
Moved by Krista, seconded by Ann. Discussion. Hearing none. Could we have a show of hands, please? 6 in the affirmative, John in the affirmative, motion passes.
Now, at this time, do you want to talk about who might present that article? Or do you want to save that all for the
Why
end?
don't we save the presentation until we
Okay.
get through the articles, and then we
Okay.
can come back and do that, because I think the more meaty discussion is as we go through the
Okay,
warrants
sure.
themselves.
Motion to approve Article 4, Sustainability.
Moved by Krista, seconded by Al. Discussion.
Should
Al.
have probably put.
I know we've already talked about this, and I know we adopted the Sustainability Committee is now is a board committee. It's just, hopefully this is the last time that we're at this point where we are approving a budget for something where we haven't really discussed the budget. It's just kind of a clunky way as a board member that I'm, doing something that we've never really scrutinized, and it's not really clarified. So that I would hope that next year, as we put forward, what is that, the FY15 budget, that we are building it into the budget itself, so it goes through the same kind of scrutiny that everything else does.
And it's important, Al, for us to have a conversation about why this article stands by itself and the history, just so everybody's informed if they're watching tonight. So the Sustainability Committee was created by the community, and last year they promoted a warrant article independent of the school board. And that warrant article passed. This winter, sustainability was wanted to be recognized as a school board committee, but the warrant situation is very similar to last year. And I know that the sustainability committee wants to integrate itself into the process, but we're in a transition year. And I don't know if is there anybody for sustainability that wanted to talk? Paul, did you want to come and talk about the sustainability piece, just so you can put that conversation from your historical perspective?
Paul Gazowski, a member of the steering committee. We are very much in transition, and as we just became advisory to the board, we're coming to grips with what that means and how that affects our organization. So, it's a bit clunky. Yeah, I would agree. And we're trying to work through it, and I think that we're working through that process now, and subject to what the voters will, if this passes, I suspect we'll continue to work through it. So,
Thank you, Paul.
Yep.
So work through what?
Pardon?
You mean work through becoming more integrated into the budget process, or work through similar to this in the future?
Oh, no, work through becoming more integrated into the budget process.
Okay.
Our goal is to fully integrate into the budget process.
Okay.
So that's our hope.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we're setting up our hearings next year, we'll set up one specifically for you to present to the board and ABC.
Yeah, I think things will become a little easier
Yeah.
all the way around. So,
Thank you,
okay.
Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ann?
While I appreciate all the work that's been done, I struggle with this on many levels. What comes to mind to me is the robotics program that established itself, went out and got funding on its own, and after they successfully did that, they came to the board and said, we're a little short, can you help us? And it was a proven program, kids participated, and it's something measurable. I appreciate how this is being handled, and it's not up to us to actually vote for this or not vote for it. The community will do that. But it's the process that I have trouble with, that we are now creating positions that don't exist and assigning stipends to them when we don't even know the value of the position. It doesn't have a proven value in our delivering education to kids. So I struggle with it. I'm not comfortable with it at all. And I also feel that while bringing, and I understand that our food service program is doing a great job in bringing in local food, by capping it with a number and an expectation to bringing local food in, it's almost like an unfunded mandate that we're putting up so much money for it, but our expectations may well exceed that. And again, it's not proven what it costs and what the value of, let's say, $15,000 is in getting local food, and that may be enough, or it may not be nearly enough. So again, I appreciate that there's the agreement this is clunky, because I agree it's clunky. And
There's got to be a better word than that, but yeah.
I don't want there to be resentment in the community that some things that are asking for money aren't getting it, and things that
Would you like Doris to address the local foods piece?
I think that would be
I brought her here, so in case that question came up.
That would be great.
Doris, would you come to the podium? Doris is our food service manager.
Good evening. It has been a little clunky, but we've come a long way in the few short months that I've been here. We have been able to bring in quite a few local products. I'm going to pass around a menu. The menu for this month, January, and everything highlighted in pink is actually a local product, which is pretty good for January, considering we live in New Hampshire and we're buried in snow right now. But we have been able... Frozen beef. But local beef, I can't tell you how much it means to have the support of the local community to support Farm to School. It is a very difficult thing to do because a lot of times it is quite a bit more expensive, and the new regulations have mandated more vegetables and better quality bread, grains, and things like that that make running a program more expensive. But we have brought in red and white potatoes, winter squash, eggs we're getting regularly, ground beef, stew beef, pork, apples, turnips. We eat turnips every day now.
Kids are eating turnips.
Kids are eating turnips. I'm not quite sure they know what they are. Because we slice them into little sticks and we put them on salads, and we have them in our beef stew, and we have them in our veggie sticks, and we have them in our roasted root vegetables. So, but this is a really special turnip, I have to say, and they come from Tuckaway Farm in Lee. And I am not a turnip person, but I really like these turnips. So I would challenge anybody to tell me that this isn't a good vegetable for kids. I never thought they would eat them, but they're great, raw or cooked. So I really was unsure when I started, when they said $14,000. I was a little blown away that that would happen in to a food service program, because it's always been really difficult to try to make things better, because financially it's always a problem. So that is a huge, huge benefit to our program. Looking at the last few months, and because I started so late, just before school started, and we didn't have contacts yet, gradually it has increased. We've had 2 months, 1 month that it was $1,200 in local products, and 1 month that it was $1,500 in local products. So I'm making more and more contacts every month, and I think $1,500 a month is very reasonable for an average for what, you know, I can see it costing for the following year, and that would round out to $15,000. So that amount actually makes sense to me. Yes?
I have a question. I don't know if they, I mean, at the, whatever, the public questionings thing, there was like a board hearing. There was a board out front that showed the sustainability gardens and that. Did we have that come into the kitchens last year, and are there plans this year, some of the stuff that we...
There was a little bit that came from the gardens, but the gardens in the schools have a little bit of this and a little bit of that. We need a lot.
Yeah.
So, but we worked in whatever we could get. We worked it in, and we just supplemented with, you know, buying from our suppliers. But I think the more of that we can do, the better it will be. I will be working with the people who are running the garden projects next year, so that we can get products that we can use.
So is that 1,500 and 1,200, is that above and beyond what you would have spent if you didn't use local products, or is it substituting for some non-local? So really, it's not $1,500 and $1,200, because some of that money or that allocation comes from monies that are not, that have already been allocated, I guess.
Well, I don't think so. In some ways, maybe a little bit, but for the most part, it is an addition to. For instance, I serve fresh local apples every day now. I would never have been able to do that. We're only required to serve 1 fruit a day, but now we have them out every day, and the kids are eating them. And, you know, in the past, kids would take a bite of an apple, or they would take the apple and they would throw it away, and they really do eat these apples. So there's a difference between a local apple, and hopefully they last a little more into the year, because it's going to be hard not to see those every time you walk in. But so yes, we are offering more choices, not just different foods.
And we're trying to work away from processed foods.
We are.
The local garden supporting local farmers allows us to walk away from processed foods, which is, you know, part of the demand that we're seeing from parents in terms of sodium and other preservatives that put in processed foods. Obviously, if we're using fresh product, we're not going down that road. So,
K-8, we have not purchased any processed chicken products this year. Nothing. I've not been able to find a local chicken producer. unfortunately, because there is not a chicken processing plant, USDA certified one, in the state of New Hampshire. So, but, you know, Massachusetts isn't that far away, so maybe soon we will get one.
There you go, Maria.
So,
Got some space in that
we
barn.
have 2 events coming up that are really going to help me. The first one is the 24th. We're having a Kids Eat Local, a meeting/planning event, and that's going to be specific to our school district. All 3 towns, Durham Agricultural Committee and Mabry and Lee, they've invited all the farmers in these 3 towns to come and meet with me, and we're going to talk about what they can produce and what I could purchase from them. So I'm hoping that there'll be some winter crops. I'm hoping that maybe, you know, we can plan for what we can use in the fall and maybe into the winter. I'm really hoping somebody is doing greens and has a heated greenhouse where we could get that into. But so this is a good opportunity for me to learn more about what's in the community, what's available, or what's possible. We don't really know right now, and you know, there may be people that want to grow things, but they don't know if they'll have a buyer. So it'll be good for the farmers in the area as well. The second one is the Sustainability Committee is working with UNH, with Stacy Perslow, and we're having a matchmaking event, and this is more regional. And there are local growers around the region that are coming, and people who want to purchase local, restaurants, schools, and they have actually paid a price to come and attend. Well, we hosted it. I jumped on that one and said we would host it, and I don't have to pay dues, so a fee to get in. But so hopefully there's going to be some other producers there that I can take advantage of and, you know, plan for the future. This is growing much faster than I thought it would, and I'm really pleased.
Are you seeing an increase in participation by the students?
I am seeing it more at the elementary school. It takes a really long time to change a culture. The participation here is very low. The middle school and high school especially is lowest, but they purchase a la carte. They may not buy the lunch, but then they'll just buy the sandwich, or they'll just buy the entree. So it doesn't count as a meal, but the a la carte is going through the roof. So I think that, you know, that is bringing in more. I see a lot of kids buying apples. So it will take time, and I'm trying to market it. We have a Facebook page, and I post tomorrow's menu on the Facebook page. I've tried to simplify it for parents, and we're now posting the same menu for all 4 schools. The portion size is different for the older grades, of course, but I think it makes it a little easier for parents. They don't have to think about, oh, I can't have spaghetti tonight, they're having it at school. Oh, wait, they're having it at that school tomorrow. So, and it's just easier for them to remember. Parents, we're up to 101 likes, which made me very happy, and parents are commenting that they really like the local fare, and I've had some students telling me, even little ones in Mohammed and Massway, that they never used to eat school lunch, but they're going to now. So I wanted to get it in writing, but...
So just to go back to the funkiness of this warrant article for this year, so in the proposed FY15 budget, Doris would have the track record of what the fresh food cost us, and then we would create a line in her budget that said local food budget or farm fresh budget or something, and we would carry that number inside the budget, at which point, going back to Al's discussion, we would have a conversation, and we would say, so Doris, what's the track record on this, and what's the actual cost on this, and justify that number to the community. So I think that part of it is going to be working really, really well for us. And I really want to commend Doris and the Sustainability Committee, because it wouldn't have happened without both of the committee and Doris's leadership. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Further discussion? Did you want to add something?
Paul Gazowski again, to follow up on that. Yeah, the importance of some of this work of the local food initiative will play out over a much longer period of time. And what we're really trying to do is close a food loop and an economic loop and bring it into a more secure setting. So It's important work. We're very proud of that work, and we're lucky to have Doris because she has some background and experience with it. So if you're available next Thursday at 4 o'clock in the middle school, the farmers hopefully will show up from Durham, Lee, and Madbury, and we'll have a discussion. They're getting ready to buy seed and plan for next year, and we'll have a good discussion about that. If I could, I would like to take a moment to address the other piece of the concerns. And last year's warrant article was for $47,000. You'll recall $25,000 to help fund out the energy audits for the buildings, $14,000 for the food, $6,000 for B20 conversion to biodiesel, and $2,000 for education and outreach activities. No one will question that the $25,000 expenditure to do the building audit paid for itself in spades. You're not seeing it this year because it's not needed, and because the emphasis is shifting over to conservation for next year within the buildings, and that explains the stipends and the need for some folks basically who will spearhead those initiatives. You're not seeing the $6,000 for biodiesel because it's in the budget presently, because in the transportation part of the budget, the fuel cost for diesel and B20 ended up being level. So it's level funded, and so Lisa Huppy's submission for fuel next year is to continue with our conversion for B20, and I guess some of the buses will continue to run on diesel through 2014. But she has a conversion schedule set up, and we're right on track for that. So there really aren't any requests for facilities, and there aren't any requests for B20, but there is a request for some stipended positions to dovetail with an initiative that the superintendent is launching to introduce green teams in each of the buildings. And green teams will be kind of across the board teams of teachers and students and community members. It'll be voluntary to pick up the sustainability initiative on a building level. When we saw that idea, we felt that we could contribute to that by formalizing it just a little bit more. And we felt that it needed some leadership. And after having worked at this for 18 months, there's a lot of heavy lifting going on here. A lot of really heavy-duty things that we're involved in that take an awful lot of time. And we have a lot of professionals on our committee, a lot of teachers and a lot of administrative people and community members who are full-time employees. They're strapped for time, like everybody's strapped for time. So we felt that we needed leaders. So we're defining the green team composition based on Boulder, Colorado, and Palo Alto, and other districts that have done this type of thing. And we felt that we needed some leadership, so we suggested that to the committee, and that's why you're looking at what we're going to call a coach, and we felt that should be a stipended position. And currently, we have backup material that is in draft form for that. Our steering committee meets next Tuesday. They will be reviewing that, so it's not ready to be handed off to you at this point in time.
Ann?
Do you have either a job description or a qualification description for the individuals that will?
That's what's in draft form. And we do have that. I don't have that with me, and it's not at a point. Matt Lynch and John Carroll have been working on that. And so I suspect that what will happen at our steering committee meeting on Tuesday, that will be front and center. And we're working our way through that. I think the green team concept will evolve over time, and this will evolve with it over time. So that's what we're asking you to do, and it's a little awkward situation, but there are plenty of good models, and we are working within those models.
Crystal?
My first question was, what will these people do? But it sounds like we don't really know that yet. And I don't know if you'll be able to answer the second and third question, but who will hire these people? And how will these people work with the superintendent's initiatives for the green teams within the buildings and not against them?
We'll craft descriptions and draft material and job descriptions and hand it off to the superintendent and in turn to you, and it will go from there. We can only advise you as to what we think this should look like. Again, there are models for it, and what these folks will be doing is largely what we've been doing, the areas we've been working in, energy and facilities within the buildings. Now that we have this building's HVAC recommissioned and online, now we got to start working on changing the culture of people behavior, and that's hard work.
Will you have those job descriptions or position requirements available at the deliberative session?
Yes, we will, and you know, the calendar is not friendly to us right now. We don't meet that often. You're not meeting until after deliberative session, so I think that what will happen is we will approve these, we'll revise them and approve them at our meeting on Tuesday, and then hand them off to the SAU and in turn to you. How we proceed from there, I guess we'll need advice on. So in an ideal situation, if we had ready-made models, you would have all this in front of you and we'd be looking at that, but we don't quite have that, and but that doesn't make it unworkable. Makes it, you know, actually it makes it kind of interesting because it
Gives us something to look forward to.
it does, and to be involved in.
Could I ask you if you'd be open to what I would consider a friendly amendment in this warrant article, and rather than say the stipend is going to be $4,000, to say up to $4,000, because as we hire, if it's a staff member, a current employee of the district, and I have a responsibility to negotiate with the guild as to what the exact stipend would be.
Yes.
And I don't have the authority, and I don't believe you do either, to tell me what that stipend would be, because I have to work with the guild to come to that. If it's somebody not associated with the guild, it's a non-issue, but I do have an obligation to negotiate stipends with the guild.
I think it's a good idea, and in terms of shaping the language, and we certainly would be amenable to that. And David Taylor pointed out to me at the beginning of the meeting that we may have an additional language problem, and I'll try to, and I might need his assistance, stipends to fund for sustainability coach team leaders. He's suggesting that that should actually say 5.
Well, isn't the 5th position the district coordinator?
Yes, it is. But he thinks that there's and I tried to point out, I was pointing out that we have 4, 1 per building level, and then 1 additional district coordinator, adding up to 5. But
Well, I think you should put, instead of changing it to 5, you should put, if the district coordinator is the 5th position, you should put after district coordinator, $4,000. Because really, the sentence says, if you take out the parentheses, which is what you're supposed to do when you're reading an English sentence, add and $20,000 in stipends to fund 4 sustainability coach team leaders, and then take out that part, and 1 district coordinator. So there are your 5 positions.
Yes.
However, you're not outlining what your stipend will be for the district coordinator.
okay, so
So
that,
it should say up to $4,000 for the district coordinator and $4,000. Perhaps you just take off that whole thing and put that at the end of the sentence rather than in the middle of the sentence.
yes,
So each of those 5 positions is funded at up to $4,000 each.
that makes sense to me, along with the superintendent's suggestion up to $4,000. But I don't know whether that happens right now. That's up to you.
Yeah, that's the process we're in, is they're approving the warrant articles for consideration.
Yeah.
Do we
So-
have to approve this warrant article since it's not our warrant article?
Do you have to approve it this year? Can it stand independent?
Because I don't know that we've approved it in the past. So this is a petition warrant article?
So it does require action.
This is our warrant article this year.
Right, that was when we shifted to them being an extension of the board.
That's weird.
Yeah, that's what Al was saying, very clunky this year.
Even more weird.
Yeah, I mean, when we last
we
met,
did
we
have to
kind of
approve
did the advisory thing, and that's what we did. And
So
here
can we
are.
change the wording on this? If it's our warrant
Yeah,
article?
this
we can change the
particular
wording.
warrant article is not dictated by law,
Okay, so
and this is what
I
sustainability is
withdraw
bringing
my
before you.
motion, and I'm going to change it. Who was second?
Ann,
Oh, Ann was.
Ann, can you withdraw your second? Thank you. All right, so I make a motion to approve Article 4, reading, shall the district raise and appropriate the sum of $40,000 for the purpose of supporting initiatives requested by the Oyster River Sustainability Committee. These requests include $15,000 for the food service to procure and process food from local farmers, $5,000 for education and outreach, and up to $20,000 in stipends to fund 4 sustainability coach team leaders and 1 district coordinator to oversee the school district's sustainability initiatives at up to $4,000 each. Period. I'll write that down.
and do you have that?
You got it, thank you. Is there a second?
Okay. Ann?
Do you need a second on that first?
Yep.
I'll second. And I have another question.
Moved by Krista, second by Ann.
That's my question.
Ann?
Paul, come on back. You are asking for $5,000 for education and outreach, and last year you just said was $2,000. Can you share with the board what the $2,000 did last year and what you anticipate the $5,000 will do this year?
2000 didn't do much, and you will find if you look at it that not much of it was expended. And I think that whereas if you look at the other accounts, we're in fine shape with that. So it's unusual for us to not expend and come back and ask for more. But the changes and the difference is that a shift in the emphasis and the introduction of green teams and the effort to bring this down to the building level, and the realization that we are looking at a lot of folks who need training, both within the school district and within the community. We're looking at a lot of folks who needed some training. So we suspect that we'll take our energy this year and put it in that direction and train, and conserve. So that's probably a modest sum when it comes to that.
Last
Krista?
question, I promise. For this warrant article. Do we need legal opinion on this warrant article, since I just changed the wording, and I certainly am not?
This particular article is homegrown. Tom asked that on another article, and we couldn't change a paragraph.
Okay.
Further discussion? Could we have a show of hands, please? 5 in the affirmative. In opposition, 1 in opposition. John? Yeah. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Motion to approve Article 5.
Moved by Krista, seconded by Al.
Okay, Sue, you're
Sue.
back on.
I'm back. So, this particular article, I think we've had discussion about what does that amount mean. So here is the calculation. First of all,
Could you read that calculation into the record, Sue, because the viewers can't
sure.
see it?
Did I just give you all my copies?
I've got a copy.
Oh, you had one in there? Okay. I couldn't remember if I put it in your packet or if I didn't. Okay, so you all have
I
one.
don't have it in your packet, do I?
Yeah.
I don't have it.
Yeah, it was in that packet. Put it in.
Somewhere.
Does everyone have one?
Chair's missing hers.
No.
Oh, we have
So do you have an extra one? There we
Do you need more?
Thank you. Nope,
Or everyone's got it?
you got it.
So if I could just kind of preface before you answer the question, Sue, you might recall in our public hearing, Rob asked what that number is, what does that represent? And we kept on saying we don't know, and he said, well, wouldn't a simple calculation be X, Y, and Z, and you'd come up with about $950,000. And Sue and I said, well, we'll get back to you when we know that number, but we don't want to guess what that number is going to be because this is a new law and the Department of Revenue has to generate that number. Sue was in constant contact with the department before public hearing, didn't have it on public hearing night, and we literally got it today because she said, look, I'm in front of the board tonight and they're going to want to know what that number is. Can you give it to us? Well, you can see it's significantly less than $950,000. It's, if I can just grab you, Madam Chair, it's $739,894. So sometimes in those public hearings, it's best to do exactly what we did. We did not know the answer. We learned it today. We're reading into the public record tonight. And so, Sue, you can go ahead and talk about the intent of this warrant article.
Sure. And again, because this is new, it is somewhat unclear. I'm still really not clear if I'm supposed to calculate it or DRA, but when we went back and forth, I said, can you calculate it for me? So on that form, you will see, too, that it says MS-22 or apportionment, so we've used apportionment to calculate it. And that is based on the figures that were used when we set the tax rate. So just to explain that calculation, that's where that came from. And also in your packet, you had a detailed description of the whole law from an attorney, if you had a chance to read that. So that kind of gave you a little bit more information on this new request. Basically, towns have had the ability to do this for years. They've always been able to do that. And for me, it's always difficult to predict tax rate when we have so many unstable things that happen to us at the last minute. The retirement issue, loss of revenues from the state. So this retaining fund balance gives us that flexibility to stabilize the rate that we predict when we talk to the community at deliberative session. We would have this fund balance that we retain to utilize that for. It's not specifically for unexpected expenditures, and certainly unexpected expenditures would need to be approved. So it's not like we could just dig into that because we decide we want to replace a boiler. It's not set up for that purpose. Although in emergency situations, you could utilize it for that. But according to the way I read the law, you would need approval from, I'm trying to think of who it was.
Well, one piece of it's from the commissioner, but
the commissioner.
On the normal operations, it would be this body.
The board.
So Sue nor I could tap into this fund without your authorization.
Right.
I think that's really important. The other piece, if I can just pick up on Sue's example, you know, if we just take one piece of the revenue loss we experienced this year, as we were going through the budget process, you know, we actually, Sue and I thought, you know, we're going to get really close to what the board wanted to see, you know, a student-centered budget that's fiscally conservative, meaning that we would have been close to your goal from last spring. And then as we went through the budget process, you lived with us as we lost $204,500 in state subsidy. Well, this is an example that $204,000 actually exists in Warrant Article 3, where, what's that, Warrant Article 3? That is a direct impact on the property taxpayers in our three communities. You could have, as a body, said, you know, we have $756,000 in this account. We want to mitigate the impact on the taxpayers of the three communities. What does it make sense for us to withdraw $204,500 to do that? Now, it would always be a discussion because there may be people on the board who say, oh, you know, that's not big enough crisis. And then we say, well, we had a cost shift of $565,000 that had a direct impact on the taxpayers of our three communities. We would have a conversation about whether it makes sense to withdraw from this account as a body to mitigate taxes on our community. So currently, we don't have that ability. We have no place to go. And this would have been a particularly interesting year to have that conversation because all the good work that you did to cut the cost of FY14's budget kept on getting chipped away at by either the state or federal government as they withdrew subsidy or withdrew or changed who was going to pay in the case of retirement. So that's one issue that I think is really compelling for us to support in terms of asking the communities to vote for it. Rating agencies, that's not a big deal in our day-to-day lives, but when Sue goes out to bond, rating agencies look at our budgets, they look at our ability to pay our bills, they look at our stability in terms of revenue, and having a fund like this set aside says to the rating agency, oh, okay, they're covered in case of need. The other piece that I would say is, cash flow issues. Now, in our district, we work very closely with our 3 towns, and if the 3 towns are having cash flow issues, we actually work with them to say, okay, well, why don't you wait 2 weeks or wait until you collect your mid-year taxes, and we can make it through on payroll and accounts payable until X. And Sue does that very dynamically with each of the 3 towns. We can use this fund temporarily to make sure that we don't have any hiccups in our cash flow. So in terms of how you operate a budget in a healthy fashion, this is a common practice on the municipal side. It's actually a common practice in Maine on the school side. And so in this case, New Hampshire is saying, this is a good, healthy accounting practice, and we're going to authorize you as a community to ask your members, your citizens, if this makes sense to you. And the other piece I would put out there is once you have reached that 2.5%, you can't compound it. It's not 2.5% per year. It's 2.5% total. And when you reach that, you cannot add more money to it until the following year if you use some, or if that number that's calculated changes marginally, then you can add to it. And so the idea here is really to stabilize how we do business, and it is a absolutely accepted practice in the industry, and I strongly recommend that the board support it so that we can at least have this conversation with our communities and say, doesn't this make the most sense for all of us?
It would seem also that, I think, going back to a figure you gave us, I think the last meeting, you're anticipating 300,000 surplus this year.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking, could you imagine a circumstance where we would have some unexpected expense that would eat that up?
Absolutely.
And I think everybody at this table could imagine something that could happen. And if that happened, you'd have no place to go, right?
The place that you start cannibalizing your budget. As a board, you'd say, okay, Jim, Sue, go out and find how you would pay for that failed boiler. And, about 7 or 8% of our budget is what you would truly call discretionary. And where is that money? It's in student supplies, and student text, and student technology. And it's in the things that we buy to support the academic program. Yeah. Or you'd stop a project. Maybe Brian Cherry, our facilities manager, plans on putting a new section of roof on this building. He just says, hold the presses, we can't do that section of roof because now we have to shift that money over to this emergency crisis issue. So what you do is you start looking inside yourself and tearing your budget apart that you carefully crafted to support the educational mission. Now is saying, okay, well, the educational mission was important when we built the budget, but right now the important piece is this roof is leaking. We have to fix it. So you start doing those kinds of what my mom used to call rob Peter to pay Paul.
My comment on this, like, I read that thing you put in the backup, and it's insane that you. And I know the accounting, it's supposed to be it's not supposed to be surplus, it's supposed to be balanced, whatever, but it goes away, and you are trying to start over from ground zero each year, and you're coming up with this 2.5%, it's supposed to be our safety egg, and we actually are kind of building it into our budget anyway. This is just a more honest way of saying, this is what our emergency fund is, instead of saying, well, we have like a $300,000 balance or whatever that we're building in. This way we know it's there to give so much more stability to the process. And I think it makes it a more open process because people know, well, there's $700,000 there. If there's a problem that comes up, that's for the $700,000. And it gives them more confidence that when we're crafting the budget, We're not trying to build some kind of a padding in there to come up with the unexpected. It's sitting in this account. So I think it's just a much more honest and open setup.
That's not how I read it.
No.
I
Really?
think, the accountants feel that you should always budget with the idea that there'd be about 300, I think they said 500.
500, yeah.
$500,000 for emergencies. This particular fund can only be used for the tax, whatever the word is, to keep the tax rate even, or for real emergencies. It couldn't be used for, and they even have to be approved by the state that's.
Yeah, but you're still, I mean, it's a.
But that
it's-
$300,000 is what we need every year, because that would go to an unexpected special ed student. That could not come out of this.
No, I understand what you're
account.
saying. I understand, I mean, of
So-
course, obviously, you can't, anybody in any budget, even your home budget, you can't run it at a cent. I mean, you have to have like some kind of padding. That's why every accountant, every financial planner tells you about that. But what I'm saying is, in this case, it's insane that you build the balance of $300,000, you give it away, and then you try to start again over the next year. It doesn't make any sense. You know,
Yeah,
there are
it
going to be
makes sense
years.
to have this.
It makes sense
I'm not sure we're
because
giving the money away.
what
It
I'm
comes
trying to
out of
say
my
is there's going
pocket.
to be lean years and there's going to be
Yeah.
not so lean
Yep.
years. So if you're trying, the idea to build the 2.5%, you're not necessarily doing it all in one fell swoop.
No.
It's going to take years to build that
Right.
$700,000, especially if we're in lean times. So, you know, that 300,000 in that case, if there is a balance, you have no other alternative but to give it all back. In this case, you could say, okay, we need $50,000, $100,000, feed it and fund our balance that would be that emergency. Because as far as I know, otherwise there is no balance ever. It's only that 300,000 that we have to rebuild each year. So it makes sense.
And
Is there a limit where the money comes from that can be put into this fund?
If you read the, I went through that report today, and you would fund it through, correct me if I'm wrong, Sue, through the unexpended balance in a given year.
At the end of the year. So it could be unexpended balance, and it could also be additional revenues.
So-
Fund balance is comprised of both of
Right.
those numbers.
This is just food for thought. I think it's slightly related. I've had members of the community ask me, is having increasing tuition students to the district a good idea? Is it going to affect? So I think food for thought might be, until we reach capacity in our classrooms, perhaps the money that's coming in from the students, the tuition students, goes into this fund.
You know, that's a whole nother discussion about how we want to fund it, and I think that you certainly could make an argument for a piece of that going, but right now you're using a significant piece for operations. You're just running the day-to-day operation of the school. But those are the decisions the board has once the voters have approved it. How are we going to generate revenue? This doesn't generate any revenue to this account. This just gives you the authorization to have the account, and ideas of unexpended balances and revenue streams are all appropriate funding sources for this.
Do we
Kristen,
have to keep $739,894? Like, if we have, say we have...
That's the max.
Huh?
That's the max.
Okay, so say we have a surplus of $492,000. That's a good number. Do we have to keep all of that 400? We can decide how much we put into this fund and how much we send back to.
Absolutely.
Right.
Okay.
All of that control rests right here in terms of that follow-up discussion. Once this warrant article happens, is we could have a whole discussion about that very issue. We could establish a goal, for example, at the board level that 50% of an unexpended balance at the end of the year would go into this. And when we get the audit report, you've already authorized it, the auditors would direct half of that amount into this and the other half to return to the
So in the June 30th meeting, which is generally when we have these types of meetings, special meeting, whatever.
I was thinking July 4th, but
Yeah, no, it has to be done by June 30th.
That's our retreat.
It's part of the discussion as to whether you're going to spend it, whether you're going to send it back, whether you're going to put it in this fund.
And I
It
might
just
push
adds
it
another
a
level.
little beyond that, because even though the fiscal year ends, there's still things coming in, so I might not know what that fund balance is until, say, August, after we've been audited and after we collect all those revenues.
I think the rules of the road is if you have a standing order from the board, when the audit is done and completed, the auditor goes back to that direction from the board and says, okay, the board made this on prior to the end of the fiscal year, that's the goal. You have to make a statement of intent and vote on it prior to the end of the fiscal year. Then the audit happens. If the audit report comes in October, it doesn't make any difference because the auditor will go back to June's meeting and say, yep, there's the motion, there's the second. Okay, this is the process the board's directed us forward, and it would happen.
And
I need to clarify why I made the recommendation I made or suggestion I made. It's an opportunity to get the money back to the taxpayer. And if our goal is to get this fund to a certain size so that we have that as a cushion, which saves us from future devastation when we don't have it, but at the same time recognizing that when we don't spend what we've budgeted, it doesn't belong to us, it belongs to the taxpayer. So if there's another way of accomplishing building that fund while still giving back to the taxpayers which is theirs and not ours, I think that's worthy of discussion.
Tom,
I just want to be clear, like, if there were an emergency with this fund, does the state have to, do we have to go to the state and they say, oh, yes, that's an emergency? Or are there certain categories of
Right.
emergencies that we could just say this is?
There's language in the legal brief that I put in your attachments that you have to reach a certain criteria
Right.
before you approach the commissioner. The normal process would stay with you. It would be an extraordinary process where you sought permission from the state.
Okay,
And I can't remember the exact language, but it amounts to extraordinary.
okay. Just one other thing, and this may, because I think this is, I'm totally in favor of it, but as I indicated to you earlier today, I think that the language of this is really confusing.
Oh.
Because, and I've read it about 15 times, and I think that it can easily be read that 2.5% goes in each year, because it's not clear what it's referring to. So, and I understand that this is directly out of the law, and so it can't be changed, but if there can be some explanation that it's not cumulative. And I don't know how, my understanding is we can't have that explanation.
We
right?
can. I pursued, Sue and I pursued that with our attorney, and the direction from the attorney is that we can add we can't add to the warrant, but we can put explanatory language to clarify that legalese. And in fact, in that legal brief, there is a paragraph that's really straightforward. And we could lift that and put that in as the explanation and cite the attorney.
Okay, good. I think we should do that.
I just want to follow up on something you said about extra revenue could go into this. And since the next article kind of talks about that, as I read the background, I got the understanding that we can never spend more than this year, 38 million,
You're right.
whatever. So regardless if we get extra revenue, the 100,000 in this next warrant article, we couldn't spend it.
Correct.
So,
And by the way, when I just read through that, that's when you would need the approval of the commissioner, is when you're going to overexpend your underlying budget authority and use your fund balance. So in other words, like you said, if you had 38 million appropriated, you've spent all of that, you had a boiler fail, and you have a fund balance of 100,000, you'd have to ask to expend that to overexpend by 38,100,000. You have the money to pay for it, but you have to ask for that approval to do that. So that's when you would need the approval of the commissioner.
so we'll talk about that at the next warrant article. further discussion on this one?
I just wanted to, Megan wrote a letter, some questions. I think we've talked about most of those, but I think that her major point was that, we've always had a rather generous fund balance, so why should we change what's always worked in the past? We were able to deal with this $500,000 shortfall this year, and that she likes the fact that the fund balance, or the school surplus money, then we get the option of giving, or that goes back to the taxpayers, which is, and so basically that was her question, why change what's worked in the past? And I hear all the arguments. I just wanted to make sure that, I'm trying to speak for her, and I'm not going to be able to do that very well.
And I don't want to, I certainly appreciate everything that Megan put in that email, and I think the one issue that we dealt with it as a body, we lost the $565,000, and the way that we did it is basically we shifted it to the taxpayer because we had no other option, because we had already cut $1.4 million from the budget. Right. So I think that the big issue is it's accepted a budget practice. It's supported by auditors, and it is best practice. It is state of the art. So.
Krista?
No, I'm good. I was going to actually make the motion, but I already did that, so. It's a
Further
long time
discussion
ago.
on article number 5? Hearing none, could we have show of hands, please? 6 in the affirmative. John in the affirmative. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Now we get to...
I would like to amend Article 6. And if you guys don't like it, you can vote against it.
Article 6.
I make a motion to approve Article 6, reading, shall the district vote to discontinue the Facilities Development Capital Reserve Fund created in 1999? Said funds with accumulated interest date of withdrawal are to be transferred to the district's general fund and appropriated to capital improvement and/or energy-saving initiatives.
Thanks. And
Second.
okay.
Moved by Krista, second by Ann.
Very nice.
So the last
so-
part of that, Chris, can you
Yes.
just say that piece again?
No, but Laura can, because she just,
Where do you want to start it from?
just the last sentence.
Oh, and appropriated to capital improvement and/or energy-saving initiatives.
And so the reason why I decided to put it in that way, I thought a lot about it, was because we had a pretty substantial discussion at our previous board meeting about what this money would be used for and why we wanted to do this. And every single reason that we came up with was for either capital improvement issues, which include the life safety issues that we have in the budget, or the projects like the Siemens project, where we're making amendments to improve the energy efficiency of our buildings. So I don't understand why we wouldn't put that in the article to tell the taxpayers who are trying to vote on this that we're not just using it in the general fund as slush money, we're actually using it for what the fund was intended to use it for, but that it's not really serving a purpose in that fund for us to do that.
Sure. So 2 weeks ago, Sue and I would have just raised the flags, shouted hoorah, and that's the exact thing that we wanted to happen. And then 2 weeks ago, you might recall, we had community member, what was her name, Sue?
Denise Day?
Denise Day come up and say, you're trying to get the 2.5% in, you're trying to do this warrant article. What if the 2.5% fails and you have no place to put this money? So, paraphrasing, Sue and I actually thought about that, talked about it, and decided to investigate it a little bit with our attorney. And it turns out that the only place that this money can go is the general fund.
Right.
So you can't add that extra sentence and direct it anywhere. It has to become part of our fund balance. So just to give us something more to talk about, when Sue and I were talking about this with Maria, it really raised our concern. If the only place this can go is the general fund, what if the 2.5% warrant article fails. So it started causing us, in our conversations with Maria, to have second thoughts about running Article 6 at all this year.
Okay.
And focusing exclusively on the 2.5%, because as Sue and I were trying to talk it through, it becomes a very complex conversation to put 5 and 6 on the table at the same time, easily confusing ourselves, and therefore trying to communicate that effectively really becomes problematic. So what we're asking you to consider, believe it or not tonight, is not floating Article 6 this year. Let's float Article 5 this year, put all our muster behind that, and then we can come back to article like this in FY15 once we have a place to be able to park it.
Is there anything that's prohibiting us from spending the money in this fund on capital improvements?
Yes.
It's in the interpretation and the intent of this original fund was new construction or significant.
Right, and it requires, in order to expend it, you need a 2/3 vote. So you it's not-
2/3 vote from the
The
community.
community, not from you. So by putting it into the general fund, it would revert to fund balance.
Okay.
What Krista talked about, you really can't do. You need to do it by making it a change
Can-
of purpose.
Can we,
So,
yeah, I'm just concerned that we've decided, or we've discussed, not decided, that what the money would have been used for, is that money in our budget?
well, indirectly, because ideally, if you end the year with a $300,000 fund balance,
Right.
but before that, you decide to utilize that for capital improvements, you end the year with 200,000. If this fund has 98, then you're back to 300. But this is how you kind of,
And that's the piece where we started thinking that's just, dicey for us to explain that in a clear, concise way in a deliberative session. And the more important warrant article for this year for us to get the voters to consider is the article
And
that
I'm not
creates
sure
the...
from my heart that that's more important to me. Because if this, we have these initiatives that we want in our facilities. And so why isn't this article more important than
Because
Article 5?
one is a structural issue related to how we develop budgets, and this is a straightforward expenditure issue, and we'll still have plenty that we could expend this money on in another year related to our facilities needs, so we
not
don't
gonna go away.
lose
No,
anything
I'm
in
not.
translation.
Yeah, I'm not concerned that we're never going to spend this money because we don't have a problem spending money. But I am concerned that the projects that we want to fund this year have that funding. Because, I know the life safety issues are in the budget, so that's a non-issue, hopefully, that they won't go over budget. But the energy saving initiatives are just as important because they're going to be saving us money in the long run. So I want to make sure that we have that money that we're talking about allocating before we go and take away Article 6.
Which gets me back to my question. If we can only spend what we have already budgeted, if this money comes in to the general fund
How do you spend it?
before July 1st, how do you spend it? You don't get to spend it.
But does this money doesn't go into this year's budget? It goes into
yes,
fiscal year 14's budget, doesn't it?
no.
Because we're voting on it in March. So it would go into,
But you're releasing an account that already exists,
Right.
so it's happening in this fiscal year.
So it'd be like a windfall. We just get extra $100,000 in the budget.
whoopee.
Revenue, a revenue.
So we'd have to spend it before June 30th?
Well, you can't spend
We
it. You
can't
can't
spend it
It just becomes
because
part of
we
fund
can only
balance.
spend what was voted
Oh,
last
right,
year.
exactly.
Right.
So it would go into 14 years.
It would come into unanticipated revenue and just become part of our our fund balance.
Which,
Well, that's silly.
Yeah,
That's
which-
just the way it is.
Okay, then, fine, let's vote on it.
So this is like one of those things, like, what is your tolerance for risk?
Right.
This is what this is asking you. I mean, it's a classic question. And in my opinion, it's unnecessary risk. So, the intent of this, and Lord knows, even with all the life safety and the energy savings, that is nothing compared to ventilation and those heat return units. We talked about, like, the Siemens thing is $600,000, the project itself. Just the ventilation in Mast Way is $300,000. So it's just a drop in the bucket. So the risk that if you do this and it fails, the money would never go for, potentially may not go for what it's intended to. It could give tax relief, which is a good thing, but our overhanging thing, which is all of our capital, wouldn't be touched. And so it would really hurt us. So by putting this warrant article on, you really risk using the money for something it was never intended for, and it's just taking a risk that's not necessary.
And the other option we have in another budget cycle is to have the voters repurpose the funds.
Repurpose it.
And so you just simply change its charter, if you will, through voter
Can we
approval.
move that trust fund? Can you move it in? Is that what that's like?
Well, but that's a warrant article, and
Okay.
I believe changing the purpose requires the 2/3 vote.
Right. And, it may be I think it would be a very, easy sell is the wrong word, but it would be very easy to have a discussion with our community members that this $98,000 is sitting there and we can't access it, but if we repurpose it to this, we can use it for energy efficiency. I think that's a much easier conversation.
This is probably a dumb question, but I'm going to ask it anyway, because who cares? Do we have to put warrant articles forth in March? Could we put a warrant article forth some other time of the year?
We're under state guidelines.
So I don't understand why it doesn't make sense to me that we put an article forth in March, and it would have to be spent by June, but we can't spend it. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me.
Because of the
How do you spend this money? Like, we have all
We
these
can't
accounts.
spend it, it's just going back into fund balance.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. Because we have these accounts that are designated for certain purposes, but if we release the money, you can't spend it.
Right.
If you go straight.
Because you didn't use it for that purpose.
But if you repurpose, you can spend it.
But we can't repurpose it because we can't spend it by June 30th because that's not the
We
money.
can't
we
repurpose it in
allocated.
this budget cycle. We'd have to do it in FY15.
I think the conversation brought out the pitfalls of this over the last couple of weeks. And the more
Okay, so
questions
forget
that
it.
were
I won't
asked,
ask
the
anymore.
more we understood that this wasn't a good idea.
Whatever we do, and I like your suggestion to just disband with it, I personally am uncomfortable with the money doing anything but what it was originally intended. And however we can ensure that to happen, I would support that.
Well, the Newmarket said we were building a middle
There you
school
go.
with them, so
We're not building middle school.
This could be a start, you know?
The chair said that's what's in the paper tomorrow.
so how do we proceed?
Well, you did have a second, so,
Yeah, I did.
you don't have to do anything.
I did have a
We
second.
did have a second.
Oh, we did?
Yeah.
Did I write it
Diane
down?
seconded.
Oh, yes, we did. So,
But
So we have to vote.
John has a comment.
No, I was going to say you seconded it.
Yeah.
so just need to withdraw the motion.
No, you can just vote it down, right?
Yep, you can vote it down.
Yeah, but then it still stays on here.
We need to change the motion to remove it from the,
Oh, because then it'll just show that it's not approved by the school board?
Right.
Okay, so I withdraw my motion.
I second the withdrawal of the motion.
Anybody object to the withdrawal of the motion? Then I would entertain another motion to,
To withdraw it? So I'll make a motion to withdraw Article 6.
I second.
made by Krista, second by Ann. Any discussion? Could I have a show of hands, please? 6 in favor, John in favor, motion passes.
I'll make a motion to approve the new Article 6, which is the former Article 7. Shall the district raise and appropriate an operating
We
budget?
already did that.
Yeah, we did that first.
Yeah, but we approved the budget. We didn't
Yeah,
approve the
now you
warrant
have to push
article.
you have to,
Oh,
See?
yeah.
You guys, experience counts.
We're going to miss her, yeah.
Okay. Moved by Krista, second by Ann. Discussion, hearing none. Could we have a show of hands? 6 in the affirmative. John in the affirmative. Motion passes.
thank you. And now we're going to move on to
Then I would-
MS 26?
Or assigning the warrant
Yeah.
articles.
Oh, right.
What do you want to do first?
That's the fun part.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Let's start at the back.
Can't we
Madam Chair,
have-
I
I'll work
suggest
with
that we start at the back.
Sustainability.
I suggest you start with Article 7 and go backwards.
What are we doing?
It was
To sign them.
actually Article 6.
So
Yes, now Article 6.
what board member wants to take on
Yeah,
Article
who wants to
6?
take on the budget?
Oh, I see. Okay. The budget?
Al wants to do it.
I mean, it's-
Good luck, Al. It was so much fun last year that you should
Why I'm
definitely
laughing
do
is,
that.
we're taking like the least experienced person, but having said that, since I'm the liaison for the ABC and I've sat through about 1 million meetings on the budget, it's like, I'd be more than welcome to do it. My only request is that I can steal a couple of your PowerPoints.
Hey, I was going to give him to you.
I don't think we shared that with the entire board, that we will do the PowerPoint, you just, with your input. So if you have slides, like Krista, you've done that, you send them to us, we'll include them, or we'll do them, send them to you, you tell us you like it, you don't like it, we fix it, change it, we go back and forth with it.
Perfect.
And it's all part of one big presentation.
Do we have ventriloquist? I could just-
Do you have a dummy person?
You're going to need one.
Okay.
So now we're,
Article 5.
I was hoping to get.
Wait, hold on. I got to figure out what I want.
Sure, take that one.
No, I don't want that one. No.
Nobody wants
I'll
that one.
take 5 if nobody
I
wants
want to
them.
take 3.
what's 3?
Huh?
And that
3
would
is
make
the
sense.
ORCSD.
You were on
Ah.
the team, that makes sense.
So Ed said he wanted to take sustainability then if we're running randomly here. Don't want him to lose out.
I've already kind of been talking with Paul about that. so
I'm going to do the
I think I might
Distinguished
as
Service
well.
Award.
Yeah.
That's not enough.
I never get to do anything popular. I've done the capital improvement plan, the budget. I'm doing the Distinguished Service Award.
It's your swan song.
Yeah.
You're doing
I
5?
get to do something fun this
Yeah.
year. Not get eaten.
And 3.
Unless you want to arm wrestle?
Um,
Tom's like, no.
I'm running for reelection, so.
And you're doing 3.
I'll do 3.
Yep.
And we don't need to do 2
No,
Or
or
one.
1 or anything else.
Krista, you're doing the distinguished.
I'll do this Distinguished Service Award.
Okay.
Awards.
Could you just go over who's doing what again?
Yeah. John, you're doing 6, 5.
I got it.
Sure.
6 is Al, 5 is Maria, 4 is Ed, 3 is Ian, and Krista's doing the Distinguished Service Award. Right, Larry?
Yes.
Yes.
And we'll get a clean copy of this to sign.
Right, and that's, I just wanted to say that because we've now revised it, the copy that I have in a packet with all the other things you need to sign, I will remove and then ask that you come to the office to sign that, because we need to post it by the 28th, and you don't have another board meeting before then, so we will do that.
Oh, sorry.
Well, no, I was just going to say that I don't think I shared this with everyone, but we had a discussion about the format for deliberative and the warrant articles, so we'll prepare the PowerPoint back and forth with you what you want. And then we also have a little booklet that we do with some talking points and information. So I'll just pass that around if you want to look at it. And then, obviously, if you have things you want in there, let me know. We put it in there, just so that you have access to information that might.
The puppet pops right out, Al.
The other thing that we typically prepare for, and I'm starting to work on that, is it's called the voter information sheet, and we list the warrant articles, and then we put an explanation next to them at deliberative session, so people have that to take with them. Even though we'll talk about them, they'll have that, so we'll work on that. And I'll send that to you, too, so you can critique it, if that's okay. Okay, good.
Wonderful.
So in the previous 2 years, we did a poster, which was fine for 2 out of the 3 towns. The third town didn't let us put it up last year. And it just has explained the budget and key items like what's increased, what's decreased, blah, blah, blah. And 2 years ago, we did a capital improvement plan, so that took like 3/4 of the poster up, but we didn't have that last year. We explained the negotiations article. You could put in something about the sustainability article if you wanted to, since that's our article this year. Or we could just choose not to do it and make a whole lot less work for the person who does them.
Do you remember the poster, Sue?
I did it.
You did it?
Krista did it.
2 years.
Oh, was
With
that?
all that experience, it shouldn't go to waste.
Well, I don't know. One of the towns will not let you put it up, I think, because they didn't last year. We did put it up the first year. We had it last year made, which they're not cheap to make. They're like $50 a piece to make. So if they're not going to let us put it up, I prefer not to spend the $50 to make the poster. And then the other 2 towns didn't have a problem with it. We just couldn't put it inside. That was the only rule.
My sense, just going in, seeing it, it was almost too much information to take in as somebody was walking in. So, I mean.
Yeah,
I
it's
think-
definitely not one of those posters that you look at and say, yep, know what I'm voting on. You have to
Yeah.
stand there and read it. But
Yeah.
if someone missed the deliberative session, that was the whole purpose of the poster, is if someone missed the deliberative session, they don't have cable, they have, no way of getting the information other than reading the minutes or
You can
something.
watch the streaming.
Or watch the streaming, there's lots of ways that you can watch deliberative
Yeah.
without actually being at deliberative, but it's one last chance for people to get information before they walk in to vote, to be an educated voter. So,
My sense is just they're going in, they're not, I mean, you maybe have more sense of how people reacted. I think people are moving fast, they're in a hurry, and
Yep.
so I guess I think it's maybe more labor than it might be worth.
What about if you have the explanation for the warrant articles that are going to be at the deliberative session, couldn't those be at the polling
you
stations?
can't
too?
put them at the polling stations, you can put them outside the polling
Outside.
stations, which is
Outside.
the whole reason why we went without a handout and into the poster, because it had the same basic information on it, but it's just a sign.
Right.
So, it gets kind of,
I mean, we will have our district report done. We put information in there. We try to get that out to as many of the community areas we can. We did the little pamphlet, which, we might want to make some changes to that. That's going to be out wherever we can get
maybe
people
some,
to put it
can I
out.
offer up a suggestion perhaps? That instead of doing the posters, that maybe we could send out the voter information that Sue does for deliberative via either Alert Now, have it posted in the library, something like that, where people could go get it if they wanted to look at it before they went to vote, rather than doing a poster. Because the poster seems to be, last year it became an issue, and I don't want to be, it was a communication tool.
Sure.
That's what it was intended to be.
Let me investigate that, because my history in Maine, we can't do that, and I don't know whether we can in New Hampshire or not. We can't use public funds to promote the vote. We can provide information, but we can't use it to promote.
Yeah, we didn't use it to promote the vote either. It was just purely information.
What we're promoting is go out and vote. That part's okay.
Yeah, we didn't even do that. It just was purely information.
So
I
you
can
can look
send you
into
the
the,
last
Yeah,
year's if you
that
want
would
to
be
see what
great.
they look
That
like.
would be great, Krista.
so then we're at the proof MS 26.
Yep, that's the last one.
And this is
We're
still
not, they don't actually approve of me to do them until after the deliberative session anyway, but,
We're just discussing it.
yeah. We're just discussing something.
So the MS 26 you had in your packet. I will tell you that we made some revisions to that, so if you're interested in seeing the new figures, I have them here. But basically, it's just your budget on this form in the format that's used to submit to the state. It's posted. It's just the way we have to present it to the public.
So it's taking the warrant articles and translating them into the format the state requires.
Taking-
and the board has to sign.
Has to sign
this
it.
document tonight.
So we can post it.
Yep.
And it's putting the detail in the boxes and the areas that are required by law.
So
Do you have a chance to look at it?
They need to move and
Questions?
second that? Or do they just have to sign it?
Sign it, pretty much.
So if we put it in Ann's hands and she passes it through until we get to Ed, will it
And
be a
then-
good place?
So I will have you do the default and that. There are 3 copies of each because we need to post in 3 places. And then the warrant is on hold until we revise it and you come into the office. So,
And Sue, just as we're doing other business and it's a distraction, do you mind walking the forms
Nope, I don't
through in
mind.
case somebody has a question
Okay with that?
as they're looking down at it? Thanks.
good with that?
Are we
Appreciate it.
signing now?
Well, actually, yeah. Yes,
Sign.
yes, yeah. sort of,
Sue, did you say we have to sign something? Come into the office to sign?
nope, that's the warrant article.
That's-
Because we deleted that article, we
Yeah.
need to print the official ballot warrant,
each of
so
these
you can sign
groups?
them.
Yes.
I mean, do we need to sign that before any,
You need to come into my office.
we
and
do
that
need to come in?
Yes.
For that piece.
That's what I thought you said.
Do you know when that will be ready?
It'll be ready tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
It's just a matter of having Wendy delete that article and renumber them, and it's that
I got it.
that straightforward.
So Friday would be fine.
Yep, and the absolute deadline for getting a signature would be,
I know we tried, the deadline to post is the 28th, but we really like to try to get it posted like next Friday, so
so if board
Wednesday,
members
let's say
would
Wednesday.
come and do that between now and next Wednesday, that would be great. You, Carolyn, do you have a report tonight? Okay. And I've done mine. It was about weather. And Sue, that brings you right back to the podium.
Do these have to be done in a certain color ink?
And a certain what?
Color ink?
No.
That's okay. 'Cause we already did.
What do you have, pink?
Oh, did you
No, I
want to
have
talk
blue
about
and
that?
red, but- Huh?
Did you want to talk about that?
Well,
Communications Committee's going to review.
right. We were talking about, the last paragraph of the vision statement needed some grammatical corrections, and we just wanted to make sure people knew that we were going to ask the Communications Committee just to
Don't we do that when we do communication?
spiff that up.
I
Yeah.
was going to say it anyway.
Oh, okay, good. Ann was giving me,
It's my list.
Wait, you're modifying the vision
it's
statement?
the bottom, for your consideration, just a little,
We're
let's couple.
not, we're modifying not the concept of the vision statement, it's just the grammar.
And the
That makes-
commas?
The commas, there's some commas
Yeah.
in paragraph 2. And
Commas tend to be controversial,
that.
so we're.
Not restructuring.
Can we do it on March 7th? Just kidding.
Where are we?
We are on
Funding
Sue doing
formula.
funding formula.
So, in your packet, you had the memo from the state in regards to how state aid was determined. So that was one piece of information that I gave to you. If there was any questions on how they determine adequacy, did you read through that? Did you understand that? Questions on that? Because this is what the spreadsheet looks like for me to pick those numbers off. And that's the
That's
explanation of it.
beautiful.
So,
So the concept, the big concept, so again, just because our viewing audience can't see that spreadsheet, the large concepts in
Can we?
terms
Sure.
of the state determining adequacy are,
it changes every year. So basically, it's calculated using the 11-12, I'm going to read from this because I can't remember it all, school year data for students in grade kindergarten through grade 12. And it's called the average daily membership. So they use that to determine it, to count the students. And then it goes into the detail on how kindergarten students are counted at half, regular students are at
Yeah.
1, so.
There were three.
So that is used to count students. And then
This is just,
they use the, and I'm going to, I always get this wrong,
Yeah.
but the other piece of that goes by the,
It's like this,
sends
I'm
it
going to have
back.
to pull up the sheet. So we come up with a basic adequacy amount, which in this case is $3,498.30. So that's how the average daily membership calculates a figure for the cost for each student in your district. Okay, so you're given money for that. Then you get money for your free and reduced population, okay?
Free and
Then-
reduced.
Like lunch.
lunch price.
Lunch,
Lunch price.
right,
reduced.
your free and reduced population, so you get for that. And then there's a special ed piece to that, the number of students that you have identified as special ed students, okay? And all of that is brought into this formula, and they give you your cost of inadequate ed. Then they calculate what they call your state that's your state grant, then you also get a piece that is your community portion or your community tax. So on your tax bill, you see that. So it really is what you would say, what you as a citizen are required to pay. So that piece, but that is really a tax to you on your tax bill. So it doesn't come from the state adequacy. So adequacy is two pieces. That's how they determine it. They determine your grant and they determine your state tax portion that's on your tax bill. And then,
Can I ask you a question, Sue?
yes,
In that paragraph that lists funds, there's a fund, or there is a factor for English as a second language
Yep.
learners. And then there's a factor for third grade pupils who have not tested as proficient or above in reading. So that is not Title I.
no.
No.
So that money is in addition to Title I. We have Title I funding for kids who,
Yeah.
Right.
All of these factors create the money that ultimately comes to the system from the state.
From the state.
So it's not in addition to, it's part of.
so I guess my point is, when we lose Title I funding, we still have another source of revenue for children who are identified in grade 3 as needing assistance.
Yes.
And I didn't get into that, but it's complicated, all of the factors that come in to figure that. So you read through that. Any other questions on that?
I've asked this before, and if Margie was here, she would probably tell us when the next time the state will reassess what adequacy costs.
They're in session now. They could take until June 30th. So they are discussing it.
So there's no statutory requirement that this legislature has imposed on itself to inform schools what adequacy is. They can carry it right through to the last day of the session.
Right, but there is a requirement that they inform us by November 15th what our proposed adequacy, estimated adequacy would be, so that we can begin our budgeting process, which is what we have. So when I present the budget and calculate a tax rate, I am using the number that was provided to us by the legislature as part of their obligation in November, but it is subject to change based on when they begin to meet in January and finish out.
So your experience, Sue, as a business administrator of many years now, is when you get that November number and when they actually pass the funds, is there a huge discrepancy?
In my experience, it has not. For the community,
So the November number is a good estimator.
It's fluctuated a little, but not a lot. But there have been threats that it would perhaps be more than that. But we've survived every year so far that I've been around without huge cuts at the last minute, I guess.
And then just to complicate this, the state is now beginning conversations on this fund that you and I talked about this week. That was a hold harmless fund.
Yes.
And they have budgeted that at over $100 million.
Right.
120 million or so. And each year threatened that they're going to pull the rug out from underneath that. So that's not calculated into the November number. If a legislature ever goes forward and does that, that's going to be a dramatic loss of state funding across the state. It would have about $1 million impact on us, but in some school systems, it would have tens of,
Stabilization. Because
Stabilization.
Because when they passed the law to fund adequacy, they came up with an amount, but it wasn't enough, because when they passed that law and they started doing the math to distribute it, there were winners and losers. So they decided that in order to stabilize that, so no community is harmed by it, by more, I think it was 5%, they put that stabilization amount in there. So each time the legislature meets, they need to appropriate that money or find that money for that.
Does the state take into consideration the cost of delivering education in Coos County versus Stratham County? Is there any factor that it's more or less expensive in the north of the state versus the south of the state?
Do they have a regional variance?
Yes, there is a variance when we go through that, yes. Yeah.
And when I look at the page that you have to turn sideways to look at on the computer.
Which one, on the state website?
The cooperative apportionment
Oh, that's another piece. Okay, so that's different. That's the amount that we locally raise, but I wasn't sure if you were questioning
Well-
that too. That's how that is apportioned among the 3 communities.
I just would like clarification on what grant is and state aid.
That's the piece that I was just talking about.
Because that's what
Right, so in other words, the state aid is the amount that comes from the state. The grant is the amount that the state says you as a community need to support your educational system with.
Grant/tax.
Tax.
Okay.
So that's the tax that you're paying.
Transparency, that word would be tax.
It's tax, it's really tax. And, it's certainly not enough to fund the budgets that almost every community in the state has. But that's the obligation that each community has. Started out as the $220, it's now $245 per student.
Okay. Can you explain how apportionment works?
Sure. You have that sheet? That was one that goes the other way.
Yeah.
After we go through, we pull the entire budget together and we come up with our total amount of $38 million. Then we go through the exercise of what our revenues might be outside of state revenues. So, well, not outside, but outside of adequacy. So tuition, we have catastrophic aid, we have a little bit of interest. All of those things get factored out. And then we drop down to a figure that needs to be raised locally. So that's your bottom line figure that you need to raise locally. And then that gets apportioned to the 3 communities. And the way that gets apportioned, that's the one that you were looking at that's sideways, sideways on the paper there. Part of it is average daily membership, a percentage of it, it's 50-50. 50% membership and 50% equalized value. And we're looking at, for last October's tax rate setting, the average daily membership for 10-11, year 10-11, FY11, and the equalized value for 2010. So it is behind a bit, because those are the most current numbers they have to use when they figure apportionment.
So that equalized value, that is for all taxable property in the 3 communities?
In the 3 communities, yes.
Okay.
And
There
the
is-
students from each community?
Yes, and that's the average daily membership. The attendance is broken down by each community, and that's the other 50%. So if you go on the website of the state, you will find those spreadsheets, and you can see those numbers. If you want more detail, it's out there. Equalized value.
So all of this starts, and from the front end of us providing the state the basic information from which they build these spreadsheets. So it's critically important, for example, that we are providing them accurate information from the front end, because I've often heard, oh, the state is this and the state is that. Well, we're responsible to feed that information. So, the better attendance we have, the better situation we're in. And we have really good attendance, and the place that you look at it, where you might be problematic would be the high school. And in Oyster River, the high school has really great average daily attendance. That benefits us. So kids coming to school matters.
Any other questions on that?
The next time, can you, make it?
Dang it.
We're having trouble with these signatures.
Well, we'll have Sue look at them.
I'll look at them.
Al got that one.
Yeah.
My delinquent on one.
So when this gets back to Ian, Ian has to pass it off to Sue, and Sue will go through it, make sure we have the right signatures in the right places.
First of all, a lot of them I can't even read this.
And then you want to do a quick budget update, Sue?
And the other piece that I had in your packet was the update for the current year. And what we've done at this point, I think we talked about it at the last time I came to you, was we've gone through, Tim has done a good job of going through and kind of estimating what we might spend on fuel, electricity, so we could kind of encumber those things that we know. So that kind of gives you a picture of what is left for discretionary monies in our budget.
Sue, could you explain for our folks who are just going through the budget for the first time what encumber means?
Encumbered means that we have an obligation to pay something, so when we do a purchase order to buy something, it immediately gets taken out of the available budget and put into an encumbered amount, and then taken out of the balance. So it's encumbered.
So we can't spend it twice.
Can't spend it twice, right. So we went through a lot of accounts to try to figure out what we would spend from now until June 30th. It's January, so it's still a little too soon to predict, but we're still looking at about $300,000 at this point. And the bulk of that is in salary and benefits.
Is that the end of your report, Sue?
That's the end of my report, unless there's any questions.
Wait, why does it say that we have $2 million remaining?
Because it's January.
Oh, so this isn't a projection as to what
No,
we're gonna
no, I
spend?
haven't done that.
Oh,
No,
oh,
I'm
oh.
not. I'm just telling you that it's,
Okay,
you know,
that's good, because
no, yeah. Get all excited?
No.
No, the opposite.
We've been saying that it's going to be $300,000 all year, and oh, surprise, it's 2.3 million.
Thank you, Sue.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Sue.
Although
you,
you
Sue.
guys are going to be the ones that have to explain that.
Student Senate report.
I told you guys at the last meeting that the Senate's looking into the school start times, and we're continuing to look into that. Within the next 3 weeks, we're going to poll the student population and hand that off to the AP Stats class. And the AP Stats class is going to chug the numbers for us and give us an idea of what the students at the school want, whether or not we should take any action on that. So when I have that information, we can get back to you on that. I can make a presentation if you'd like, and we can get the ball rolling or not, depending on what we want to do about the school start times. Sam Lewis, who's the leader of the Senate this year, also wanted me to tell you that if you ever have anything that you'd like the Senate to look into, please do not hesitate to tell me or him.
Is it a survey that, what is it, a survey that you're doing?
We're surveying the students about start times.
Did we do, nobody's going to know that answer.
You can ask.
We did this whole
I
process
have a
like
whole
2
book
years
in my
ago.
office.
It was longer. It was
Yeah.
longer than.
Didn't
No, it
Dover
wasn't,
just
'cause I
do
was on the
this?
board.
I thought I read it in Foster.
I don't know.
Rochester is looking at.
John.
We did it.
Yeah.
Superintendent did it 2
No,
years
it
ago.
was just in the
Wait,
paper.
time
Yeah.
out.
We
I'm
Rochester.
talking.
And the research
2 years
supports
ago,
it.
we did it. The
Right.
superintendent did a whole study on start times here, and I didn't know whether he did any surveying of the students during gathering that information that would help the student senate in their process. So if there's any information in that study, I never saw a copy of it. I was on the board.
I just
but-
found it on my shelf last week.
Yeah, if there's any information in there that might be helpful to the student senate, I
Yeah,
would suggest that we do that so that they're not reduplicating efforts. That doesn't make
I
sense.
have that in my office, John, you're welcome. I'll give it to Todd, and he'll get it to you, and you guys can look through it for whatever value it has.
All right, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Yep. I don't know whether it'll be wonderful, it might just be a dusty thing that you'll go through.
It's a wonderful thought, anyway.
It said not to do them, so that was the end result.
Annie?
Let's ask a question. Has anything more been done about the idea of weighted grades? Is that still alive? Is that?
That idea, I wouldn't call it completely dead, but it's such a complicated issue, and the general consensus is that we're not going to end up doing anything about that.
Okay.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, John. Anything else? Other? Announcements and commendations from the district.
Todd Allen from the high school. Just a couple of things I wanted to mention. Yesterday, we had 11 visitors from the Deerfield Community School District that are part of the high school study committee, came and visited the school and spent the morning with us. Probably the highlight for me was we went to the library and we're just talking about how their day had gone in their visit. And to the person, what they were most impressed with was how nice our kids were. One woman mentioned that she said, "Did you tell the kids we were coming?" It's like, and we really didn't. Did you know that they were coming, John? Anybody know that Deerfield people were coming?
I found out the Deerfield people were coming the day before when Miss Watton called me down to her office.
That's right. You were one of the
I was kind of wondering
helpers.
what was
I'm sorry.
going on.
But in general, students didn't know. And they went through, she was passing through the senior corps, and there was just a group of seniors that struck up a conversation with her. And they had this wonderful conversation, and they were telling them all the good things about our school. And so she came in, and it's like, wow, what do you do to make such nice kids? And I said, I wish I could tell you. We just have really nice kids. So anyway, that was sort of the highlight. So the Deerfield process is obviously moving along, and we're obviously there investigating us. Just to give you an idea, they have a community referendum that they are voting on in March, kind of putting forward the three things that they've looked at: Oyster River, Pembroke Academy, and Concord, just to see what their community's interests are. And obviously from that, we'll know whether they get more serious in terms of their conversations and start talking with Dr. Morse. Yes?
How many students is that?
Deerfield's high school population right now is 188. Yeah. On that same subject, tomorrow night I'm at the Newmarket School Board, just because I love school boards. Can't get enough. They actually invited me last month to come in and do a similar presentation that I did in Deerfield last month, just telling about the high school and answer questions that they have. So that's moving forward there.
And we should also add that you called me this morning and said, please, let's have a school board meeting tonight.
Oh, yes, it's true. I begged Dr. Please do not cancel this one. It doesn't matter what the weather is. And the last thing I want to just mention, and I promised the students who are behind this that I wouldn't name them by name, but I just think it's such a really wonderful thing.
Describe them.
They're very nice kids, just like all of our kids. But if you've had a chance to see, there's a new Facebook page called Oyster River Compliments that is out there that, in sort of the wake of some of the sad events that our district has been through in the last couple of weeks, it has really taken off in a really positive way. And the students, again, who will remain anonymous, approached me and said, is there any way we can take some of these compliments and make them more prominent in our school? So we're using our 2 TV message boards and posting just a sampling of the comments. And there's over 800 of them that have gone up. They went from 100 to 800 in 2 weeks. So people are really taking it very seriously. Adults are posting things as well as kids. And we're focusing on, issues of character and just general, good qualities of people. And what I like the most about it is it's entirely student generated, and it's something that they value. And so I think it's pretty cool. So once again, we got nice kids. So thanks.
Nice.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Jay Richard, the principal of the middle school. Just 2 real quick things. First, our 5th grade concert for chorus and band was actually scheduled for tonight. That obviously was canceled and has been rescheduled for tomorrow. And congratulations to Russell Miles, who is the middle school representative for our National Geographic Bee. If you ever get an opportunity, go to the National Geographic website and check out some of the questions that these students have to answer. I witnessed the bee last week, and we'll just say these are really, really tough questions, and I was really impressed with all of our kids for their answers. And again, congratulations to him. Thank you.
Thanks.
National Geographic Bee.
And the next step, he
goes on to the state competition. He has to do a written test, and we'll see where he goes from there. So, the middle school National Geographic Bee. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you. That's it?
That's it.
From the board? Nothing? I went to the PTO meeting Monday and listened to the returning students. Mr. Allen was moderating. That was impressive. I liked it. They certainly had kudos to the English department. The writing skills that they've learned in Oyster River goes a long way in college. Discussion items. We have none. School board committee updates.
I have one. I have a committee update. I attended the New Hampshire School Board Association meeting on Saturday. And while I did not get there for all of the training portion in the morning, because my kids had basketball and I had a childcare issue, I did attend the delegate portion of it. in its entirety. And it was not nearly as exciting as last year. So. There was nothing that we voted on that was against the school board recommendations.
Al?
I have one. The Communications Committee met yesterday, and as mentioned, we looked at the brochure that was handed out at the public hearing, and that we're going to hand out at the deliberative session. And everyone thought it was great. The only change that we came up, which was on the vision statement, as we mentioned before, had nothing to do, it's not controversial about changing what our vision really is. It just changed what our vision, how commas are used. So, so we will on the 29th look it over again just to make sure that it really is appropriate, and then that'll go out at the deliberative session, and everyone can pick one up and look at it, and it's really good, so it's worth looking at. And then the heart of our discussion was how do we improve our websites? And my own self-interest is that I would hope, I'm never going to live this down, that someday I will be able to look at them and not send my kid in pajamas on picture day. So it's like, how do we get the information out there, prioritize what's important in a usable fashion for people? And it sounds like a really simple thing to do, and it's just not so simple to do. So what we, after looking at the pages, have come up with, there's no really standardized structure of how people are doing it. I know at the buildings you guys have assigned somebody and they're working on it, but we've never really built in any training for anybody so that we can, add on, like, besides just like putting up a picture, can you really change your website to meet more of your needs? So can that person get some training? Software, can we build, what's good software? Can we give it to you? Do we have to buy it? Can we build that in our budget? And then what's obviously going to be the biggest thing is time, is like whoever's going to do this and is in charge of this, where's the time come from? So we have a couple of people, Kathleen Young and Josh, our IT guy, are looking at it and trying to come up with some model that we can work forward, that we can come up with a budget and hopefully give each of the schools the flexibility and tools to have effective websites. So that's where that was at. I think that's it.
Thank you. Anybody else?
You want to do the future search one?
The Future Search Oversight Committee, is that what it's called?
Steering committee.
Steering Committee met last night. We're still in the getting organized phase, but moving forward. It's a good discussion group, good people, so stay tuned. Motion to approve regular meeting minutes for 1, 2,
February
13.
6th and March 6th, so moved.
No,
No.
the minutes.
Yeah, yeah, I'm going to approve the minutes for the meetings that are going
We
to
know
occur. January 2nd, 2013.
It was a good test to see if we were listening.
Yeah. I'm proud of you guys.
Moved by Krista, seconded by Ann. Discussion, any additions, deletions, corrections? Hearing none, could we have a show of hands? 6 in the affirmative, John in the affirmative, motion passes. Public comment. Hearing none. Closing actions, agenda planning, setting review of future agenda items list.
I just say I've never been at a school board meeting where there has not been a single public comment, ever.
Megan missed it.
I know.
Somebody-
I'd be upset.
Get up there.
Um,
Well, just as agenda item, at some point, we have to, the evaluation of the superintendent.
Yes.
Is something that we have to figure out when that is done and how that's done.
We do it on March 7th.
Does that have to be done?
That's exactly what I don't want.
Before the election.
The new-
Yeah. So stay tuned on that one. At some point in the future, We did have a presentation on risky behavior, and I heard a lot about what happens to those kids that we catch. I would like to hear more about the preventive issues, preventive efforts, and if there's no objection, my daughter-in-law just organized a statewide forum on the drug courts and their preventive programs, and I would love for her to come and make a presentation on that.
Great.
If that is
Well, it
something.
fits right into that, because drug courts, as you know, are incredibly effective mechanisms for mitigating student behavior. Research is incredible on it, so I
Right.
think that would be very appropriate that evening. The fact she's related to me doesn't make sense.
Nepotism here.
Krista?
I would like to keep on the list the issue about the elementary schools and the
Redistricting.
yeah, because if I don't put it back on, then no one's gonna.
Oh, Tom's on it, too.
On what?
Don't worry, because then I'll be over there yelling at you loudly and bringing a mob. Don't worry, I'll bring a mob.
With lots of public comment.
Yes, with lots of hours of public comment.
I think the policy committee looked at that policy of district placement and asked superintendent to forward it to the elementary principals. And we're waiting. I'm holding my breath until I hear back from
Please don't.
from the principals at Mohammed and Mastway. And future meeting dates, 2/6/13, 3/6/13, and we approved those minutes. And there is no non-public session. And with
That's what I was going to do.
no fighting. Motion by Krista, second by Ann. Ann,
Oh, give me one.
unanimous. Look, where are
You can have lots.
Can I have one?
Sure.